Good morning. So today we're going to be taking notes on solving radical equations. But first things, I would like you to go ahead and pause the video and try the warm-up. So you've got 4 problems that are based off of our previous 2 notes. So if you could pause and solve, I would appreciate it. All right, so here's your answers. Solving radical equations. Warm-up. So for these, the 18, you should have factored treat, and it would have ended up being 3 square roots of 2 plus 5 square roots of 2 minus 1 square root of 2. So 3 plus 5 is 8, minus 1 is 7. For number 2, we should have bow tied it. So this would have been the 4th root of 16 to the negative 3rd. 4th root of 16 is 2. 2 to the 3rd is 8, but because it's negative, it goes into a fraction, so we get 1/8. 3, we should have distributed this negative 2/3 to each. So 27 to the negative 2/3. X to the negative 9th times negative 2/3. Y to the 6th times negative 2/3. So the 27 to the negative 2/3, you should have bow tied like number 2 and gotten 9. The x raised to the negative 2/3, 9 times negative 2 is 18. Divided by 3 is 6. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. Divided by 3 is negative 4, so the y goes on the bottom. And then 4 is very similar. We distribute that exponent. So x to the 4/3 times 12. Y to the negative 5/6 times 12. 12 times 4 is 48. Divided by 3, divided by 3 is 16. 12 times negative 5 is negative 760. Divided by 6 is negative 10. And since it's negative, it goes on the denominator. All right, so let's get into some of the actual solving radical equations notes. So we will do 5 plus the square root of 3x plus 4 equals 10. 5 plus the square root of 3x plus 4 equals 10. So our goal here is to get the square root part by itself. So to do that, I need to get rid of this positive 5 here. So the opposite of adding 5 would be to subtract 5 from each side. So the square root of 3x plus 4 equals 5. Now we need to get rid of the square root. So to get rid of the square root here, we are going to square both sides. And when we do that, the square and the square root cancel on the left side. So 3x plus 4 equals 5 squared, which is 25. And now this is just a normal 2-step equation, which you've probably been seeing forever. So to get rid of the plus 4, we're going to subtract 4 from each side. So 3x equals 21. And then divide each side by 3 so that x equals 7. All right, I'd like you guys to try number 2. The square root of 4x plus 1 minus 5 equals 2. So go ahead and pause the video and try number 2. Check your answer. You should have gotten 12 as your answer. All right, let's try some more. Number 3. 3 times x plus 1 to the 2/3 equals 12. 3 times x plus 1 to the 2/3 equals 12. So this x plus 1 to the 2/3 is a radical, okay? Remember, if we bow tied this, this is a radical, so we need to get rid of the 3 that's in front first. We cannot distribute that 3. So I'm going to first divide each side by 3 to get x plus 1 to the 2/3 equals 4. Now, I need to get rid of this x plus 1 to the 2/3 here. So to do that, I'm going to raise it to the opposite power. I'm going to raise it to the 3/2, because 2/3 times 3/2 is the 1. So I'll raise each side to the 3/2 power. So I'll end up with x plus 1 on the left, because the 3/2 and 2/3 cancel out. On this right side, we're going to need to bow tie. And there's going to be something a little bit special about this bow tie. We are taking the 3/2 power of each side. So when we bow tie, this is the square root of 4 cubed. Now, if you remember in the first lesson in this, when we take the square root of 4, we are taking the square root of 4. It's not telling us to take the square root of 4. Even roots give us 2 answers. So we're going to get negative 2 cubed and positive 2 cubed. Well, negative 2 cubed is negative 8, and positive 2 cubed is positive 8. So what's going to happen is we're going to have 2 answers. We'll have x plus 1 equals negative 8, and x plus 1 equals positive 8. Which means we could get x equals negative 9 as an answer. Or we could get x equals 7 as an answer. And anytime we get 2 answers, we want to plug them into our original to make sure that they work. So when we plug in 7, 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 to the 2/3 power, cube root of 8, is 2. Squared is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Now if we try the negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8. The cube root of negative 8 is negative 2, but when we square it, it becomes a positive 4. Positive 4 times 3 is 12. So for this one, we're going to end up with 2 answers. And we're going to end up with 2 answers because we're taking an even root here, the square root. All right, I'd like you to try one similar to this. So we'll do 2 times x plus 3 to the 2/3 equals 18. So go ahead and pause the video and try number 4. 2 times x plus 3 to the 2/3 equals 18. All right, check your answers for number 4. We've got 2 times x plus 3 to the 2/3 equals 18 as the problem. And our 2 answers for this one, we should get x equals 24 and x equals negative 30. And again, we could plug these in and check to see if they are correct. Okay, let's try number 5. Three times the 5th root of x plus 1 cubed plus 1 equals 25. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this fifth root of x plus 1 cubed. You could leave it if you'd like and solve it, but I like to kind of rewrite it. It makes it, in my opinion, a little bit nicer. So this is 3 times x plus 1 to the 3/5 power plus 1 equals 25. So we need to get rid of this to the 3/5 power by itself. So I need to get rid of the times 3 and the plus 1. So what I'm going to do first is subtract 1 from each side. Then to get rid of the 3 in front, I'm going to divide each side by 3. And now to get rid of the raised to the 3/5 power, we're going to raise each side to the reciprocal power. So this is to the 5/3. So I'm going to raise each side to the 5/3 power. So 3/5 times 5/3 cancels out. So we just end up with x equals 1. And then here we will bow tie the 8 to the 5/3 power. So this becomes the cube root of 8 to the 5th. Cube root of 8 to the 5th. This will be, cube root of 8 is just 2. And the reason we don't have a plus or minus here, we don't have two answers, is because the cube root is only ever going to give us 1. So the cube root of 8 is 2, so this is 2 to the 5th. 2 to the 5th is 32. So it means x plus 1 equals 32. So x equals 31. So this one will only give us one answer here. And the reason is when we take an odd root of each side, odd roots are only going to give us one answer. All right, I've got one more problem to show you guys. So number 6, I've got the square root of x plus 7 minus 5 equals x. The square root of x plus 7 minus 5 equals x. So the first thing I want to do is get this square root part by itself. Okay, so to do that, I need to add 5 to each side. Now when you add 5 to each side, this does not become 5x. The right side, x plus 5, is x plus 5. We cannot actually add those two together because they're not common terms. And on the right side, we'll have the square root of x plus 4. Excuse me, of x plus 7. Now to get rid of the square root, we square each side. So on the left side, the square root of x plus 7 is just x plus 7. X plus 5 squared is x plus 5 times x plus 5. You cannot distribute the squared because of the addition sign in between it. So we'll distribute the x to each to get x squared plus 5x. And then we'll distribute the 5 to each. So we get plus 5x plus 25. So combine like terms, 5x and 5x gives us 10x. So x squared plus 10x plus 25. Now here we're left with a quadratic term, so we're left with x squared. Anytime we have an x squared in our problem, we always want to make it equal 0, so that we can either solve this using one of our methods that we already know. So to do this, I need to get rid of this x plus 7. So I'm going to subtract an x from each side, and I'm going to subtract 7. So on the left side, we'll have 0. And on the right side, we'll get x squared plus 9x plus 18. So on the right side, we can factor, we can use the quadratic formula. We could do completing the square. My preferred method is factoring, because if a problem can be factored, I think it's the easiest. So we are looking for factors of 18 that have a sum of 9. So two numbers that multiply to 18 that add to 9. So two numbers that multiply to 18 and add to 9 would be 6 and 3. 6 times 3 is 18, and 6 plus 3 is 9. So this equation would factor into an x plus 6 times an x plus 3. And remember, this still equals 0. So what number would make x plus 6 equal 0? Well, this would be x equals -6. And x plus 3 would give us x equals -3. Now, we don't want to box our answers just yet. When we're ending up with two answers, especially when we're doing this extra distributing over here and we're having to factor, we always want to check our answers. Okay, and to do that, we are going to take our x's, so these two, and plug them into the original equation. So x plus 7 minus 5 equals x. So let's plug in the -6. So this will become the square root of -6 plus 7 minus 5. And we're going to see this, does this equal -6? Well, square root of -6 plus 7 is 1 minus 5, and we're saying, does this equal -6? The square root of 1 is 1 minus 5. Does this equal -6? Well, 1 minus 5 is -4, and this does not equal -6. So when this happens, we say that this is an extraneous solution. So whenever we get a problem where plugging our answer in does not work, that produces what we call an extraneous solution. So x equals -6 would not be one of my answers. Let's try the -3. -3 plus 7 minus 5 equals -3. And we're going to check to see if this is equal. Square root of -3 plus 7 is 4. So the square root of 4 minus 5, does this equal -3? Well, the square root of 4 is 2. So we get 2 minus 5. Does this equal -3? Well, 2 minus 5 is -3. So yes, this does equal -3. So this means that the x equals -3 is my only solution. Now, it is possible that both of these could work. So we could have two answers, Or if we have no answers, if none of these worked, it would cancel out and we'd have no solution. All right, and that's all for today.